March 16th, 2017. I know that I am in the minority, but Keion's premise is undone by its framing in a light music club. Even if light-hearted slice of life was the intention, it makes me question why it didn't take place in a baking club. It especially makes the concert in episode 12 seem so much more implausible, given how little they actually practice. Admittedly, the music is top-notch, and the animation is decent. 3 out of 10. This is what I wrote about the first season of Keion so many years ago when I first saw it, and looking back at it now, I cannot help but bury my face in my hands, shake my head, and laugh. What was I thinking back then? How could the series that I came to like so much be something that I so resoundingly dismissed at the time? Well, to tell this story, we need to start at a place you may not have expected. It's a beginning, yes, but not the beginning of when I first saw the show. It's the beginning of this channel, and the first video I ever made for it. When I wrote and edited my Those Snow White Notes review back in June of 2021, the very first line I said was this: I've taught music and music history at a university, but for some reason, music anime and I have a bit of a troubled relationship. Even though the still shot I featured way back then was from Tari Tari, the real anime I had in mind when I wrote that line was Keion. At the time, it stood as the shining example of the music anime that best encapsulated that sentence I wrote. I thought about including a still shot from that series instead at the video's timestamp, but decided against it since I didn't want to sink my AniTuber lifestyle before it had the chance to even take its first real steps. The few people I have spoken to on Discord already knew that I did not like Keion, such to the point where it became a running joke in the server that it was a no Keion zone. The attitude I had towards Keion was not the result of only one viewing either. I had seen it again a few months later, a second chance prompted by my friend saying the ever so helpful quotation, "You didn't get it." At the time, I thought, what's not to get? It's a series about a bunch of friends in a music club that spend most of their time eating cake, drinking tea, and doing little incidental cute things. And they occasionally do music. For a show that took place in a music club, I was so stunned that music was held at a distance, often ancillary to whatever cute whims or whimsies the narrative decided to do. Like my comment says, I understood that happy fun times was the intention more so than anything else. I guess Yui being adorable is okay, but where's the musical substance? But were my friends right after all? Was there simply something that I wasn't getting, or something that wasn't resonating with me in the way that it was supposed to? Goodness knows that there is plenty of media that exists where maybe the first time you see it, something doesn't hit you in the way it was meant to, or it takes a second time around the block to try and reconcile that. There's also a difference between getting a show and getting a show, since one is more a mental awareness of what it's trying to do versus experiencing the actual emotional affect it has on you. But that second time around the block ended in failure. I didn't smile or laugh any more than I did the first time, and, if anything, I disliked it even more. It's true that I had made the commitment to watch the show all the way through a second time, and this was a concession that I didn't usually allow. Perhaps you could say that since I was watching out of a sense of trying to make my friends happy, it was a bit of a fool's errand. With hindsight, it certainly can feel that way. Make no mistake, a part of the reason why I watched the season was because I did indeed have a sense of curiosity about whether I had missed something. But the context of my friend's comments and remarks was certainly buzzing around in my head when I made the decision to do so. Depending on how you want to perceive that, it was a doomed viewing from the start. So, why did I decide to give the first season a third chance? It's already a rarity that I give an anime a second chance, but let alone a third one? And for something I was so sure I disliked the first 2 times. I thought a lot about this, and there are 2 reasons for it. One was my own anime viewing life. When I made the decision to watch more anime starting back in mid-2020, I had exposed myself to a slew of shows that ran the gamut between super silly to stone cold serious. The attitude that I long held for my own academic musical studies was starting to translate to my other types of media consumption. Especially given the extraordinary sandbox anime has to play with, I wanted to see more of what the medium had to offer beyond the few franchises that I had fallen in love with. I had also made more of a concerted effort to learn about the industry itself, both from the people who work on anime to the process of learning about how things move from point A to point B on the production line. This is still an ongoing process, by the way. I'm not a textbook or encyclopedia on the matter, and I'm certainly not a historian. The other reason, and I believe this to be even more true than the first, is that I simply was not the same person that I was all those years ago. I don't mean this strictly in terms of age, but in most facets of my life. I don't look back on the 5-year prior version of myself very fondly. It was not a period of depression or deeply rooted anxiety, but rather just the state of being a far more dour person altogether. I was skilled at hiding it, to the point where some of my friends never noticed, but I was easily irritable, impatient, and even though I didn't have any overtly destructive or self-destructive tendencies, I just didn't think of myself as the best person to be around. If I had to break it down to a single descriptor, I'd say that I was just an unpleasant fellow. With a personality like that, I don't believe that it's too much of a leap to understand why I was repelled by Keion the first 2 times. When you have dourness collide with an anime that is so unapologetically cute, happy, and all about trying to make you smile, a reaction of some sort is only to be expected in the end. In this case, it just happened to be that rather than triggering something nice, I just unpleasantly rejected it. My dislike of the season somewhat bled into a general aversion to the cute girls doing cute things genre as a whole, and any time I saw that tag on something, I wanted to run clear in the other direction. I adopted the mindset of, why would anyone find this entertaining? I'm better than this. If you watched my last video on anime critics and anti-popularity bias, that's a statement that's going to sound way too familiar. But that's the way I was back then. The older version of myself that I've long since left behind was the secret audience member to whom that video was targeted. I did not believe that Keion was the worst anime that I had ever seen at that point in my life, but it certainly was on my short list of anime that I would rather leave behind and never look back. Does that mean that the earlier dislike that I had for Keion was somehow now completely invalid, or that I should throw those things out altogether? Not necessarily, no. What I felt all those years ago was very real. Keion back then did not make me happy, either in actually watching it on my television screen or thinking about the show in the aftermath. I cannot pretend that those reactions didn't exist. But the other side of the coin is that your reactions to a show do not exist in a vacuum, to be sealed away forever unchanging. As you grow into your own as a person, begin to watch more media, and start to get a grasp on your overall aesthetic self, it is entirely worthwhile to go back to what you once felt about something and re-examine it through new lenses. If it's a TV series like Keion was, you don't even necessarily need to see the whole thing, but even just watching a couple of episodes to think to yourself, maybe I do feel differently about this. While I've posted about this sentiment on AniList before, I think it's worth repeating here. How you feel about a show or a review that you've posted is not an immovable object or monolith that's meant to stand forever. It ultimately is, at the end of the day, how you felt about something in a single crystallized moment. One is not required to be beholden to its words or sentiment forever. Your opinion is indeed allowed to change. And I'd even go so far as to say that they should change, or that you at least are more sure of your original feelings in a more critically literate or worldly manner. The videos I've made here on this channel are time capsules of the version of me that existed at that particular moment in time, immortalized forever as a YouTube video regardless of what time and experience will do to the real-world Z-Note. And for me, time and experience has been far more kind to both myself as a person and my attitude towards Keion altogether. Watching the first season a third time, I couldn't help but smile more, laugh more, and be swept up more in its particular brand of cutesy, sweet-as-sugar fun. I grew to look forward to the ways Yui tries taking care of her guitar and get distracted by trivial things, the way Ritsu manages to bother or tease Mio, Mugi being fascinated by completely mundane things, and so forth. To put it another way that I emphasized earlier, I may have gotten keion back then, but it was only recently that I had gotten keion proper. Evidently, it just took my invitation a while to get here. But get here it did, and I'm glad that it did. Actually, maybe it wasn't an invitation, maybe it was a club membership form instead. So, to my younger self, I'll say this. You may hate keion now, but give it time. And I dare say, give it fwa time.